Ladies and gentlemen, greetings from Somerville. We are here today with comedy ventriloquist Mark Merchant.
Hi, Michael.
How are you, Mark? Now, comedy, the first thing we got to talk about is your title. I said you're a ventriloquist. You said, well, let's call me comedy ventriloquist. And in fact, in your promotion, you don't even mention ventriloquist. Why is that?
That's because so many people have seen so many bad ventriloquists in spite of the superstardom of people like Jeff Dunham and Terry Fator. I want to be known as a comedy performer who is a ventriloquist. And so I use the comedy of two voices in one, Mark Merchant.
Okay.
But the pictures of me and a puppet, so most people are going to assume
they get it.
I'm either a ventriloquist or just very lonely, which could be.
Speaking of, I came into your room here, and there's sitting on the bed two of your puppets right here.
Yes, Zelda Rose. Hi, Michael. Zelda, and that's Alonzo did not make an appearance. And I'm really upset about that. That's Alonzo Jackson, my African-American gentleman who went to Howard University, and Zelda is retired. I know, yes. He's good looking. Leave him alone. Okay. hashtag Michael too.
Now let's back up. How do you start? How do you become a ventriloquist? As a kid, I know as a comedian, I loved comedy. I loved watching stand-ups. I loved watching Carson, all those guys. I was like, oh, I love comedy. So even though I never thought I was going to be a comedian growing up, I look back and go, well, that made sense because I certainly loved comedy my whole life. How about you? How do you first get a taste of it?
In some of the same ways that you did, I got a taste of it by watching ventriloquist on television when I was growing up, and I get the feeling I'm probably older than you. And I used to see in the 60s a ventriloquist named Jimmy Nelson, who used to do commercials for Nestle's Quick.
All right.
And he had two puppets, Danny O'Day and Farfel. Danny O'Day was a boy, a smart aleck kind of boy, and Farfel was a dog. And Danny O'Day, the commercial would go, oh, yes, Nestle's next, so there he does. And the dog Farfel would go, chocolate, and his mouth would snap. And the first entertainer that I ever saw in person live at a Cub Scout banquet was a ventriloquist. He did magic as well, and my dad was a scoutmaster, and he had hired him. He was an Atlanta police officer who did magic and ventriloquism on the side as a...
Sure.
And I remember he obviously told the ventriloquist, mention my son Mark Merchant in the show. And so Clem Fortner's got his puppet. His puppet was named Sam, just a postscript. When Clem Fortner died a few years ago at age 94, he willed me Sam.
Is that right?
So I have Sam.
Oh my goodness!
In my home.
Really?
Now,
really. On that note, how many puppets do you have?
At home, if you came to Merchant Manor in Stone Mountain, Georgia, I've got 18 puppets sitting in my office. Some were created for one-off specialty corporate dates where, like, I worked in Saudi Arabia 4 times for the oil company.
Okay.
And they wanted a camel puppet.
So you literally have to have that. Now, that was one of my questions, is how do you even come up with a puppet? Is someone that builds them for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, some ventriloquists have that skill where they can build their own puppets. I have tried it once to build a puppet.
Right.
And when I got on stage, this is when I was in high school, when I first pulled the trigger to make his mouth move, his jaw literally just kind of, and I thought, okay. And I thought I had...
You're up there and you can't...
I learned it from a book of the ventriloquist Paul Winchell. He had Jerry Mahoney and Knucklehead Smith. These were all pioneers in the early era of television. Okay. And he had in his book, Ventriloquism for Fun and Profit.
That's the name of the book?
That's the name of the book. How to build a puppet. But just like you, besides the ventriloquism, I loved comedy. Yeah. I loved getting in front of people. Yeah. When my parents, Peggy and Sherwood Merchant, would go on a date, and there were 3 Merchant children, Mark, Matthew, and my sister, Luke and John. No, her name is Melissa. We're all from the Bible. Thank you. Thank you.
You're slipping jokes in here.
Yeah, trying. So when we would have a babysitter to come look after us, and it was agreed that we could have a little, refreshments. So we would have popcorn and sodas. What you want to give kids before they go to bed. But I would always get to perform, and I would either do ventriloquism, or I would stand there, and a jump rope was my microphone. I would have the handle of a jump rope, and I would stand there, and I would do verbatim. I had a little 3-inch reel-to-reel recorder that I got when I was 8 or 9 years old, and I would record the comedians on the Ed Sullivan Show.
I love it.
And I used to remember Jackie Gleason when he would do stand-up. He'd have a cigarette in his hand. Well, I've never smoked anything, but I would have a candy cigarette. And I remember standing there and doing jokes that I didn't even get. Yeah, some of these new dances, last night I was doing the mashed potato and slipped on the gravy.
And who were you performing for at this point? Your family?
The babysitter and my brother and sister.
Now, you said you also sometimes did ventriloquism. With what? With what?
I had, when I was 10 years old, I got as a Christmas present a Danny O'Day puppet and a record by Jimmy Nelson called Instant Ventriloquism. True.
Okay.
It was a 33 RPM vinyl record. And
so your parents knew that you were into this early on.
Right. I mean, I grew up in the middle of the middle class.
Okay.
My parents were nice enough to afford me the opportunity to take piano lessons and guitar lessons. All the merchant children were exposed to culture. My mother had a vocal scholarship.
How many siblings?
2.
2, okay.
Yeah, I'm the oldest. My brother Matthew is 18 months younger than me, and my sister Melissa is 5 years younger.
Right. Did they go into the business at all?
No, they're normal.
No.
They're members of the workforce. They have 401ks.
Oh, man.
And retirement plans.
Grown-ups.
Yeah. And children, too.
They don't own puppets.
No. I have children, but they travel in a suitcase, and there's still a tax deduction. Once. So this record, Instant Ventriloquism, and this is the absolute truth. One side had instructions about how to be a ventriloquist, and Jimmy Nelson, the ventriloquist, narrated it, and it also had a little booklet, and he would go, "Hello, students, I'm Jimmy Nelson, and I'm Danny O'Day, and I'm Thartle." And he would tell you how to avoid moving your lips on the certain letters. And
well, that would be my big question, yeah.
Like B, M, and P, and how you do substitute sounds. But the flip side of that record, the instant ventriloquism part, had the dummies lines on the record, and it had enough of a gap. So you would be there, and you'd have the puppet, and you would go, "Hi, folks, I'm Mark Merchant." And then the record would go, "And I'm Danny O'Day." So he even told you, put the record player behind a chair.
And you can actually do the whole bit.
Instant ventriloquism.
I love it. Instant ventriloquism.
That's still how I'm doing it.
Now, about the lips moving, is it something that's teachable? Can anyone do it? Or did you have to have an ability or kind of like a knack for just being able to not move your lips? Like, could I learn how to do it?
You could learn how to do it.
To an extent?
To an extent. But I do think for a male to learn ventriloquism, and I believe this with all my heart, you need to start learning it before you reach puberty, before your voice changes. Because your vocal cords are a little more fluid at the time.
Okay.
And so when
you're training them.
Like my female character Zelda, hello, when she speaks, I'm not even thinking about it. It's second nature.
Okay.
But the not moving your lips, I work real hard on it. I practice every day.
Do you really? Still?
Yeah, still. Not because I'm a narcissist.
Yeah.
I see some ventriloquists now. I mean, there's some ventriloquists who had some major success. Otto and George.
Sure.
I mean, very funny, but a terrible ventriloquist.
You could see
he moved his lips more than Edgar Bergen. So
I don't know who that is.
You don't know who Edgar Bergen is?
No.
Wow. Edgar Bergen was probably the reason that anybody is still making a living as a ventriloquist. Edgar Bergen was the biggest star on radio way before television. The Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy Hour.
All right.
Edgar Bergen is the father of the actress Candice Bergen.
Oh, okay.
And he had Charlie McCarthy, who was a smart aleck kind of with a top hat and tails. And he had this really kind of dumb guy, Mortimer Snerd. Hi, Mr. Bergen. And Edgar Bergen started out in vaudeville, and he was a great ventriloquist, technically and funny. And then Rudy Valley, you probably don't know who he is either, but he was a star in radio. He offered Edgar Bergen a spot, and Edgar Bergen got so popular that they do I need to get that phone?
Yeah, you can get the phone. We're in real time here. Go ahead and take the phone call. Yeah, this is
Mark. Hey, Elvie, honey. I'm doing my podcast, so how about we plan dinner about 5:45? I'll give you a knock. Bye.
That is live in the moment.
Live in
Feel
the
the full. We thought it was your big break. We thought it was the agent calling.
Edgar Bergen was a great ventriloquist, and then he got on the radio, and then he was offered his own show,
Okay.
sponsored by a brand of coffee, Chase and Sanborn. Chase and Sanborn presents the Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy Show. Well, as a ventriloquist, like bees, to say any word that begins with B, you
Right.
substitute D and G kind of together. You learn to use the tip of your tongue and the back of your tongue at the same time. Like if you're going to say the word a ball, you say ag doll. A ball. A ball.
Oh my.
ball. A ball. What are you going to throw? A ball. And what kind? It's a baseball. A baseball. Yeah. You like to? I like to play ball.
Wow.
So,
And I can tell our listeners right now, I'm sitting here, his lips literally did not move one bit. I'm close up. I've
Thank
seen
you.
you in the theater, and it's obviously, it looks good from the seats, but boy, I'm 2 feet away from you.
wow.
And man,
Thank you.
Not a,
I'm honored. How much do I have to pay you for
No,
this
they-
nice comment? I've got my money clip over here. But so Chase and Sanborn, as part of the script, Edgar Bergen would mention the product name, product placement, and or the puppet. Charlie McCarthy would say, Chase and Sanborn. Well, when you're not looking at the puppet,
right.
you don't have that visual illusion going. And so the Chase and Sanborn executives called the producers and said, tell Mr. Bergen we are Chase and Sanborn, not Chase and Sandorn.
Ah.
And so Edgar Bergen realized he was doing it on the radio, but he would bring his puppets in. When I've done comedy clubs, and you've done comedy clubs, when I go to do radio, I take my puppets with me.
Right.
And sometimes the disc jockeys are like, why are you bringing the puppets? This is radio. Because I want to keep it alive for
I
me.
would think, yeah, because it's part of the deal.
But
yeah.
Edgar Bergen, and he admitted later in life he became a lazy ventriloquist because, I mean, he was a megastar.
Yeah.
He was the biggest, he was
Okay.
the, I don't know, what's the biggest television show going now? He was that on radio.
Wow.
The Edgar Bergen. But you see him, you can YouTube Edgar Bergen, and you'll
Okay.
see him on Ed Sullivan or Jack Parr or even Johnny Carson.
Sure.
And
sure.
he was,
Wow.
he moved it. Plus, he was an older man. He died in 1978. He had the perfect death for show business. He really did. He really did. He was the opening act for Andy Williams,
Yeah.
the singer in
Yeah.
Las Vegas, and he did his 35, 40-minute set. And then he said on stage, he said, show business, every act should have a beginning, a middle, and an end. He said, I think I've reached the end of my career, so it's about time I pack my little puppets away and bid you farewell for the last time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Left the stage, huge standing ovation. This was at the Hilton in Las Vegas. Went upstairs to his hotel room, went to bed, died in his sleep.
Are you kidding me?
No.
Wow.
In October of 1978.
Wow. That was it. Final show, went up, went to sleep. That was it.
And
Wow.
that's not the way I want to go.
No.
I want to go in an orgy with me and the puppets
The puppets.
and my wife.
Now does your wife get creeped out at all by the puppets? Is she bothered by them?
No, she's not.
Because it was a little when I walked in here and they were sitting on your bed. It was a little bit jarring to be like, oh,
Well, I knew I was going to do a podcast. That's my lovely bride.
ah, my goodness gracious,
Beautiful redhead.
Yes,
And-
absolutely.
And I met my wife through ventriloquism.
Is that right?
She's a school teacher, and as a ventriloquist, I can do cruise ships, I can do comedy clubs, I can do corporate events, but because it's somewhat kid-friendly, I can do school performances.
Okay.
And as you know, a gig is a gig.
Absolutely.
So in 1986, I was doing a tour of schools in Georgia, and Camp Creek Elementary School, I go, and the same bit that I did last night, but a little different, where I get somebody up on stage.
All right.
I would not get a child on stage because I knew then if a child gets scared, and also I don't want a child to get creeped out by me touching their shoulder. I was aware even in 1986, don't touch a child, Mark. Don't touch a child. And,
Okay.
and no law enforcement had to tell me that. I knew. But I would get a teacher up, and I'm not an idiot, I always get a good-looking female teacher.
Sure.
And so I picked this lady out of the audience, and I touched her shoulder, and she moved her mouth to the song Do, Re, Mi. Do, my dear. And she just hammed it up, and I started falling in love right there on stage.
Ah.
And when she sat down, that guy right there, he said, Miss Osborne, you did such a good job. I think Mark ought to take you out to dinner. What do you think, boys and girls?
No way.
And 600 kids went, yeah. And when I went to the office to get my check for the show, the receptionist at the school, Rachel, she said, she gave me the check, and I said, that teacher I got on stage, Miss Osborne, can you give me her phone number? And she's like, security? No, I'm not giving you her phone number. I said, well, here's my card. I invited her to go to dinner. I'd like to make good on my promise. And I had not done that before. I had gotten teachers on stage and I'd flirted with them, but there was some chemistry.
Clearly, yeah, a little connection.
When she went to sign out that day at school, Rachel said, Cindy, Mark Merchant, the ventriloquist, left his card. He wants you to call him, said he wanted to take you to dinner. And she said, oh, he said that in the show, but I'm sure that's just a bit. And Rachel, God bless her, she said, no, he acted like he was serious. You ought to call him up and tell him you want to go on one of those cruises with him. And Rachel was a Southern Baptist, and Cindy did call me up that night. I was 32 years old, and I was back living at home. Major success. Mom and Dad. My mother answered the phone. Mark, it's for you. I said, hello. Cindy Osborne said, Mark Merchant. I said, yes. She goes, this is Miss Osborne, Cindy, the second grade teacher. I said, hi. She said, is that your wife that answered the phone? I said, no, it's my mother. She said, are you sure? I said, yeah, I'm positive. I've never been married.
I'm quite sure.
And she said, well, you mentioned you wanted to take me to dinner. Why don't you just take me to dinner on one of those cruises on which you work?
Really?
Which was a bold statement. But she was, clearly she liked me. And I said, well, we could do that. I said, but before we occupy an 8x12 room for a week, we should probably go out a few times in Atlanta, where we live.
Not a bad idea.
And so we started going out, and I did take her on a cruise about 6 weeks later on Royal Caribbean.
Okay.
And we started falling in love. And 2 years later, we got married, and we got married on stage. None of this is made up. This is all true. I've got records of this. I was doing a show in Gatlinburg, Tennessee for a convention. Not great money, but it was a fun gig. And we couldn't go skiing because the ski slopes were closed. So I proposed to her the day before, bought her a ring, and we got married on stage. I hired a minister to come up on stage. The MC of the show said, what's your last bit? I said, well, usually it's a bit where I put the puppet in a suitcase, but tonight I'm going to get married on stage. And the MC said, what? He said, have you checked with the convention committee? And I said, no. It's easier to get forgiveness and permission. And we got married on stage.
Is that right?
And then sat down and watched the rest of the show.
That is
we did get a standing ovation. That's going to the map for a standing ovation.
If anyone's going to, exactly. If anything deserves a standing O. Well, now tell me a little more about for the writing process. I mean, one of the things I noticed, I'd never thought as much about ventriloquism as when until I met you and said we're going to do this podcast. And so I was watching you so closely. And one of the things I did notice is that the puppet seems to have the majority of the jokes, right?
Correct.
And in a fun way, you can be a little more irreverent, especially these days with some of the PC stuff.
Yes.
Well, the puppet can be the one saying some things, and you're kind of the innocent straight man. Is that true? Am I right in observing that? Is that
you're correct in observing that, but it's in the current politically correct culture, it's getting harder and harder.
Is it? Yeah.
And I try to walk that line and let people know this is all in fun. Let's have a good time. I'm not a political commentator. I'm not trying to set policy.
Exactly.
I'm just
and you even said that in your show. We're going to do both sides.
When somebody asked me today as I was walking into town, they said, "Do you ever get any flack about your political stuff?" I said, sure, once in a while. Yeah. I said, and the lady was very astute. She said, well, I noticed you did 3 jokes about Republicans and you did 3 jokes about Democrats.
Exactly, yeah.
I said, to me, that's...
What more do you want? Yeah. Well, that's okay. Well, that's kind of fun then. When you were coming up with your characters and your main stable, I guess, of the puppets you use on stage, was it chicken or the egg? Do you say I want kind of the fun, maybe a little loose? Her name is
Zelda,
and she's loose. And she drinks a bit, and she's kind of a wild cannon sort of, or wild card, I guess. Is that? Do you decide that going in, or how do you decide? Like what?
I wanted a lady character.
Okay,
and that lady is kind of based on my grandmother, who's been gone for a long time. Who
Okay.
was she wasn't as outspoken, but she was married 5 times. And
Is that right?
And she liked to have a drink, and she was a fun,
Okay.
she was a fun, great, generous human being.
I
And so
love it. Well, you nailed it on there. Then that's perfect.
my grandmother.
Well, so that's nice. It's personal then
Yeah.
to you as well. Then.
My grandmother was 80-something years old, and she told me that she wanted to go see an adult movie. This is way before videos. I kid you not. I kid you not, Michael. And my girlfriend and I at the time, the girlfriend at the time was Debbie. We took her to see, and it was probably soft core, but it was at a theater, and the name of the movie was called "Is There Sex After Death?" Which, what a great movie to take an 82-year-old lady to.
Oh my goodness.
And when the lights came on, I'm sitting there, and people are looking at us like,
Right.
what kind of pervs are these two people with this older lady? But
I love it, and I can see Zelda doing it. I can see her go.
yeah, so
You kind of have in mind someone who's a character that, in this case, literally someone who's part of your life, and they're funny to you, and they're irreverent, and I can see how that would be an absolute slam dunk. You also did something that I'd never seen before that I thought was just hysterical, and you called it the mask, right? You called it
the ventriloquist mask.
Ventriloquist mask, and for our listeners, Mark brought a volunteer on stage from the audience, a real live person, and then puts a mask over their face and which looks, forgive me, but a little bit creepy at sometimes, but it's also wild and funny, and it's this incredible thing. And then Mark controlled the mask and the guy talking while there was a real live human on stage.
Right.
That was one of the craziest things I've ever seen. Now, is that a newer thing for ventriloquism? Or
I mean, it is newer, but it's hardly original.
It is, yes.
A lot of ventriloquists are doing this now, and
it is hysterical, because to watch a real person, especially that first show I watched, the guy was sort of like looking around, his cluelessly, like his physical, he was just kind of like turning, and then you meanwhile are making this mouth move on him. It was just creative and different. I'd never seen anything like that. I enjoyed that a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, you really made me laugh in your show.
Well, I appreciate it.
Very clever, original material. I not one joke that I had heard, and you had that audience. You're so likable on stage. I worry about that.
I'm getting by on
that. That I think people think I'm too much of a smarty pants, and I'm not. I'm a nice guy. But
yeah, I don't think you came across that way at all. I
Okay.
thought you played. You were the straight man, to a degree with the fun puppets. But no, I think I think your persona works well for the interaction that you have.
good.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I think so. And there's a level of, I think, professionalism. You're dressed nicely, and you're put together. And I don't know. I think it works. I mean, obviously you've been doing this a little while, so
A few years.
Yeah. What is next? What comes forward? Is there evolution to be had within the world of ventriloquism? Are there young ventriloquists coming up? I would think guys like Terry Fader and Jeff Dunham, certainly you look and go, wow, there's money to be made.
Yeah. Jeff Dunham has the Guinness Book of World Records for selling more tickets on a comedy tour than anybody.
Is that right? Good Lord.
And full disclosure, Jeff and I've known him since he's 14. He's about 7 years younger than me.
Okay.
He's still a great guy.
Is he
a
really?
Nice guy. When he comes through Atlanta and plays the arena, he'll call me and say, "Hey, Mark, if you want to come." And because I'm not a guy who's going to call somebody and say, "Hey, can you get me tickets?"
Right, right.
That's not a classy thing to do. But Terry Fader's a very nice guy. I've seen Terry in Las Vegas. I had a corporate date, and he made a point to come and see my show.
Is that right?
Which is very nice. And then my wife and I were going to see his show, and I'd already bought tickets.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, I'll get you in tonight." And I said, "Oh, I've bought tickets." And he said, "Why'd you buy tickets? I'll get you tickets." I said, I didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
He got my money refunded somehow from Ticketmaster.
Are you kidding?
I think I lost $1.60 for the service charge. and then introduced me from the stage and said, "Oh, it's always great when another professional comes to see you. I saw Mark Merchant do a corporate day this morning." He said, "Mark, stand up. This is a great ventriloquist, ladies
Is
and
that
gentlemen."
right?
I mean,
yeah.
you know.
What a nice, classy thing. Yeah,
was-
that really is very cool. And it's nice, and I love what you did. My biggest pet peeve is, like you say, when people just want tickets. And my favorite ever has been when I go someplace and someone says, we're coming to your show. And I say, oh, let me hook you up. And they say, no, we already bought them. I always love when people do that. I think it's just such a nice, like, no, we value what you do. We don't run out looking for favors or handouts. We bought tickets. We're coming tonight. And I think that's such a great move. And then even better that you got your money back. Well, Mark, I cannot thank you enough for taking a little time here and sharing your friends.
And I did bring them out just for the atmosphere.
I am going to take a photo so we can share it with online when we promote this podcast, so everyone can see who we're talking about.
And if I can promote one thing, you said
please.
Evolution. I have a DVD which I've had for 10 years, and I'd like to give you one.
Oh, my goodness.
It's called Naked in a Full-Length Mirror, because that's a line in my show. If you can't laugh at yourself, you've never stood naked in a full-length mirror.
That is fantastic.
But I have a new one coming out. It's called I'm Happy. MarkMerchant.com.
MarkMerchant.com. I'm happy. New DVD coming out. Well, that is Greetings from Somerville. Thank you guys for tuning in. Please like, rate, and review us on iTunes. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.